Mars moved into the sign of Aries, the sign of instinct, of courage, and of raw new beginnings. We are having this energy present with us from April 9th till May 19th of 2026. And it's time to talk about what this means for you. If you know me, hello. And if you don't know me, hi, I'm Amia from Resonance Astrology. And today we're going to talk about in-depth horoscopes of Mars and Aries. If you've never heard me do this before, we go fully in depth into the whole storyline. So I don't just talk about what Mars in Aries means going through it as a singular transit. No, 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 no. We're going to talk about the whole story. We're going to talk about what it means that Mars is also conjoining Saturn and Neptune and all the other planetary bodies. And so you have a much greater understanding of this whole transit and its whole impact in your life. We're going to initially talk about the archetype, then we're going to go through the transit timeline in and of itself and break down the transits, and then we're going to get into horoscopes. You're going to find all the timestamps in the description below. So if you want to skip ahead, feel free to do so. Otherwise, I'm happy to meet you at the next slide. So, we're going to talk about what Mars in Aries even is from an energetic archetypal perspective, because this is a very raw sign. This is about decisive action. Aries, in and of itself, is really one of the more impatient signs. It's very outwardly focused, and it's kind of bringing us into this position of really doing something about it. There are other signs like, maybe Pisces and Sagittarius, which are Jupiter ruled, and they base a lot of their action taking on having faith and having belief. And then we have, let's say, as another example, the Saturn signs, which are Capricorn and Aquarius, and they base a lot of things on waiting for the right time to do things. But Mars in Aries is very much, I'm going to create the clarity through doing action, through decisive action. Like, I'm not going to wait until I get some synchronicity or some sign or some omen. I'm going to be the omen. Like, I'm going to create the omen. And so there is a lot of decisive action required from us, which, depending on your chart and which energies are otherwise present in your life, this can be something that comes very naturally to you and you're very welcome of this energy, or it can be very, very harsh and it feels like you're being thrust into that, like fighting arena. And it's like, go fight, like do it. And you're just like, I'm a bit overwhelmed. And it is also a sign of very much raw instinct and initiation. Like Aries truly is an initiation because it's the first sign that comes after Pisces. So it's the birth, like after the death comes the birth. And that is Aries energy. Even in the German language, which I find extremely interesting. I live in Switzerland, by the way. I'm from the Swiss German speaking part, but our name for Aries is Widder. And rebirth is called Wiedergeburt. It's not the exact same words, like Wiedergeburt is with IE and Wieder is like with a double D, but the pronunciation, like the sound of it sounds very, very similar. And I always found that particularly interesting that in the German language, we literally have it in the name. It is a rebirth, truly. And even when we look at nature, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere, which is a lot of what Western astrology has been built upon, nature is rebirthing itself as well, right? Like these buds are beginning to bloom into spring, and that is raw life energy that is required for a small seed to sprout, to get the initial like, now I'm alive. Then comes the tending part, which is Taurus season. But Aries is that initial spark, that powerful moment of initiation. And again, it is a bit raw. Rebirth moments are always a bit raw. When we get reborn, we are always a bit raw and vulnerable. And yet it requires so much courage. Courage to begin, oftentimes before we feel ready. And I think this is, out of so many years, what I have learned is that rarely is there a moment where you feel 100% fully ready for something. Like, for sure, these moments exist. Like, you have a full body yes, and you're like, I'm so ready. But even sometimes something comes into your sphere or your body, and you're just like, I'm so ready for this. This is actually what I want. And then Aries season rolls around, or like Mars and Aries chimes in, and it's like, Do you have the courage to do it though? Like, do you actually have the courage to do it though? Because what hinders us from achieving our greatest wishes and desires is oftentimes the courage that we are lacking to actually pull through and do it. And Mars in Aries is a reminder that the world belongs to the brave and courageous. Because oftentimes it's that act of courageousness, of just opening your heart and being like, I'm ready to do this. I like, even if it fails, whatever comes out about the important part is the experience I'm gaining for it. There is no failing if the goal is to experience, right? Like that is Aries energy. And so of course, naturally, there is a lot of self-trust and independence that is involved in this because Aries does not wait for the approval of somebody else. It's like, okay, if none of y'all want to go on a hike with me, I'm just gonna go alone. I'm not dependent on everyone else. And that also requires a lot of self-trust, like doing things with yourself. That is how you get to know yourself. This is why Aries, the embodiment of the self, like the sign that we always talk about when it comes to the self, it's also Leo for sure, but Leo maybe in a bit of a different way. But Aries rules over like the singular person, right? Like from an evolutionary perspective, Aries being the sign, it's the newborn, it's this first separation from the mother, now it's a singular being. So there is a lot of self trust that needs to develop. How do you develop self trust? Well, it's by being with yourself, by doing things on your own, by experiencing how far can you go or not, and trusting yourself in that. This is how you build the self. Okay. And then there is a direct expression of desire that is also required with Mars and Aries, or well, not required. I guess it's the invitation, right? Every time, everything in astrology is an invitation. You don't have to do anything, but I can guarantee you that if you don't, usually it gets just very hard. And we have not just Mars and Aries right now, we have a whole Aries stellium. So the direct expression of desire is definitely something that we are being invited to do daily and not be scared. Or maybe that's actually not the right word. I think we can absolutely be scared, but courage is the act, or and bravery for sure as well, of doing it despite the fear, doing it with the fear, doing it while your voice trembles, while your body is shaking, and still expanding. We still have Jupiter in Cancer as well. That is very much, and later on, Mars is eventually going to square that Jupiter. That is going to be a very, very powerful moment for that direct expression of desire. And we're also being invited to reclaim our personal will here. That is also always like with Aries, there is always this, and with Mars especially, okay? I think this is maybe even Mars energy in and of itself. There's always this urge of reclamation because Mars, as an archetype, likes to fight for it, likes to overcome things. Mars rules the square aspect, and squares are always like they create, yes, they are about tension for sure, but what we want is to overcome that tension, right? There is something that is hindering us, maybe a real obstacle, and Mars is like, how can I overcome that? How can I overcome that? How can I reclaim that back? And I think a lot of us also right now are realizing that maybe all these dreams and visions that we have been having through all the very heavy Piscean years, there is a reclamation of that dream as well, of like really doing things for it, of being like, actually, I think now I'm ready to actually really fight for that dream and do something for that dream. And I have my personal will that I want to lay down and actually go and do it. So, this is what I have here for Mars and Aries as an archetype. I hope this is an amazing introduction that you can kind of get a feel for it. Also, by the way, I'm fully aware that this is being released a bit later on. It's not April 9th. It's already gonna be, what is it, like April 14th when this is coming out. So I'm sorry about that, but I also had to take a step back. I was on holidays and I'm here now. So Yes, this is going to get released just after April 13th, so just after we had that Mars-Neptune conjunction, but it's all going to be still relevant, right? There's many other transits that we are still going to go through and live through. Yes, so April 9th, we already had that moment. That is the ignition moment. That is where things start moving again and certainly have started to move again. I'm wondering how you guys are feeling because now we've had this energy for a few days, and this can always create a bit of urgency and momentum, a desire to act, to initiate, and to begin. But what is important here is that Mars in Aries, again, it doesn't wait for clarity, it creates clarity through action. So many people might feel like, I don't know exactly what I'm doing, it's like, bam, but I need to move. I need to move. And that's okay because right now we're still very much at the beginning of this and we're just coming off of Mars Neptune, which is certainly a bit of a confusing time where it really feels like you're being thrust into that fighting arena, which is gonna. We can actually look at the birth chart as the arenas. Like whatever house this is active for you right now, this is the fighting arena that this is happening. And so it might just be like that you're thrust into that, but you're like, I don't know what I need to do, but I just need to run. Like, think of the Hunger Games. Think of the Hunger Games where you go out and in the movie, right? Like what I mean in the book as well, right? But what happens is you kind of get thrust into that arena and everyone's just like, I need to run. I need to do something. Later on comes the thinking. First, I just need to fully react and not land into freeze mode. I need to move. I need to get my weapons. And then I probably need to go far away so I can think for a second. And this is very much how this is feeling here initially, especially again with Mars Neptune conjunction. And this is it's a bit of a complex conjunction, I feel like, because we have action meeting vision, illusion, and projection. And this can look like, feeling deeply inspired but not fully grounded in how to do things yet, or acting on something that feels right, like I'm doing this for a higher purpose, but it isn't like fully clear yet what that higher purpose is. And definitely something to be mindful of here. But again, we're coming kind of out of this is, you know, thinking you're acting from clarity when you're still acting from a dream, projection, or a hope. And again, this can be beautiful, but it can also be a bit misleading. After that, things get a lot more clear. Like April 16th, we have Mars sextiling Pluto. That is definitely a shift. And things become a lot more effective then because Mars and Pluto together are very raw, primal energy. And this is precise, this is intentional, this is strategic action that we get with both of these. And this is where things can actually move and transform on a deep, fundamental level because we're no longer just reacting, but we are acting with depth, with awareness, and with impact. Like we really want things to move and to change, and realizing that to do something we have never done before, we must become someone we have never been before. So, yes, if you want to shift timelines, this is the time to shift the line. Then we get to April 17th. Look down here at the screen. I have like these are the transits, and this is like also what's going on, okay? Because we have the whole Aries stellium throughout April. We have a new moon in Aries on April 17th, and we also have a full moon in Scorpion May 1st. Why did I put this in here? Even though it's not an exact transit per se, they're ruled by Mars. Both of these moons are ruled by Mars, so they're very much relevant. And this new moon in Aries happens one day after the Mars-Pluto sextile, so it's infused by Mars that is just coming off a Pluto sextile, okay? And this new moon in Aries is really like the true new beginning. Like every year when we get to that Aries new moon, this is where we get the true new beginning. This is also the first moon after 2, if not 3 years, if I'm mistaken, where we're getting the first Aries new moon that is not an eclipse, guys. Okay, like that is a bit insane. So whatever is resetting in your life, it is also being rebirthed at this time of the year. right? So again, in a way, this new moon isn't about manifestation, but it also is about manifestation. But it is about the manifestation that is like, what steps do I actually need to take to create the reality? One thing that is coming right now in my mind, which I think might be relevant here, not in my script, but one part of a prayer that I often like to ask the universe when I'm seemingly standing in front of an impossible task, and that is Mars. And that is Mars, like standing at the bottom of the mountain. You're like, I gotta conquer this somehow. How the F will I do that? I ask the universe, make me into the person that can. Like, if you want me to do this, if you want me to have this job, if I should be having this job, let's just take one thing for example, make me into the person that can easily get this job. Or like if you want me to be someone that is deeply athletic and also has a great work-life balance, like make me into a person that is like show me the way, show me how I can become that person that can do that. I think that is a very wise way of trying to manifest. I'm not trying, doing. Like there's no trying, just do it. Just do it is definitely the motto of this new moon. Just took a sip of water. Let's continue talking about April 20th, where we don't just have Mars Saturn, we also have Mars Saturn Mercury conjunction. So all of these are coming together on this day, all three of them. This is where reality arrives. And this is pressure, this is resistance, this is structure. This is where, not every impulse can be followed and not every desire can be acted on. And we're being asked to act with discipline and with awareness and with a lot more responsibility. And for many, this can feel frustrating. Mars, Saturn together are like pushing the gas pedal and the brake at the same time and put Mercury into the mix. This is like a mind that is like, I want to do this and this and this and this and this. It's a bit Mercury in Aries, I think, is kind of a bit similar to Mercury in Gemini, where it like has all these ideas and wants to do all these things, and it's like, how do I do everything at once? Well, you can't do everything at once, right? And this is that sobering up moment where it's like, okay, let's refine our direction. Because it's about what you're actually willing to do. What are the sacrifices you're actually willing to make to become the person that is an athlete, that gets this type of job, that lives the life that you want to live? What are the sacrifices you're willing to make to create this in a real, raw way for your life? And then we get to May 1st. We get the full moon in Scorpio, where we reach another point of culmination because full moons are always about culminations. And you can obviously look back half a year ago. I don't know the date right now by heart, but look back at when we had that new moon in the sign of Scorpio. This will have probably been October or November, like late October, early November last year of 2025, because this is also the culminating point of that new moon. But yes, the full moon in Scorpio, moons in Scorpio in general, they always bring emotional intensity and depth and truth, like this urge for like, I wanna know the real raw truth. And this is where the consequences of our actions begin to show. And not necessarily externally, but more internally, because Scorpio is the it's the yin part of Mars. Aries is the yang part of Mars. We can also say feminine and masculine, but I usually try to stay away from that because I don't know, I think it does things to us when we gender it in that way. So let's just think of it as Aries is the equivalent of Mars as like very outward focused energy, and Scorpio is the equivalent of Mars of very inward focused energy. And so this full moon is going to be a lot about like control and vulnerability, um, and emotional entanglements. And the question here really is kind of becoming of like, are you acting from power or are you acting from fear? And well, we're gonna probably do a whole video on covering this full moon in Scorpio, but what I want to say here is just that sometimes Mars, and especially Mars in Scorpio, needs to be get pushed into the corner to actually make and create the changes. Sometimes this has to step from fear. There needs to be this moment of, okay, I'm gonna die and transform, in that very like Scorpio type of way, because people, yes, people associate Scorpio with transformation. It is true, but a lot of people are forgetting that Scorpio is a fixed water sign. Scorpio does not actually really like to change. There's other signs, like the mutable signs, are way more adaptive, and they like to kind of, mutate and become different versions and everything. Scorpio, like, yes, Scorpio transform, but Scorpio often transforms from fear, from spite, from being like pushed into a corner where it's like, okay, the death and rebirth process feels more bearable now because I have to do it. So and certainly it can also come from other places and feelings, but that full moon, the moon is in fall in the sign of Scorpio. Again, it's a very icky one. But let me not make this video about that. There is so much always to say about the moons, the new moons and full moons in Scorpio. There's going to be a separate video on that when the time comes. So let's get to May 5th, where we have Mars Jupiter square. This is where we get into expansion mode. But it can easily also be a bit too much because, Mars Jupiter squares can bring overconfidence, overextension, doing too much too fast. And this is where people can easily overshoot. Especially when we have a Mars in domicile and a Jupiter in exaltation, like both planets in a strong position. And action can easily become very excessive rather than aligned. And so this is definitely a moment to like check yourself and think about if what you're actually doing is aligned, or do you just want to do more for the sake of doing more? Do you just want to overwork yourself for the feeling of feeling like you did so much, and you stayed all these extra hours at work even though you didn't actually really fully do something productive? You're just like, it looks good on paper, like, wow, this person stayed 4 extra hours at work today. Like, but it's like it's not healthy in the long run at all. Like that is that type of transit. So it's definitely, check yourself. You better check yourself before you wreck yourself. That is what is coming to my mind. Yes. And then after that, we don't actually really get any more Mars transits in and of itself until May 19th. Well, this is not a transit per se, but just Mars then switches signs. Mars enters into Taurus on May 19th, and we get a whole different vibe and a whole different shift. And then I'm going to welcome you with a new video on Mars in Taurus. And then we're going to go through the Mars in Taurus transit timeline and everything we need to know about that. Yes, so now we're going to get into horoscopes. I recommend you watch for your rising sign just because this makes more sense with how the houses are aligned. But if you only know your sun sign, or if it just resonates much more deeply with you, absolutely feel free to also watch for your sun sign. Watch for both, however you seem fit. But I do always have to mention that I do recommend listening to your rising sign because, again, with the houses, it just makes a lot more sense where the planets are placed. So let me just get my notes fully ready here because they're in a separate folder. Okay. And let me take a sip of water before we start. Mm-mm. Okay, Aries suns and Aries risings. Welcome to your Mars and Aries horoscopes. I'm sure this one's exciting for you because Mars is activating your first house, which is the house of your body, of your identity, of your vitality, the direction in life, and the way you meet life head on. And I mean, like in this way, literally head on, because Aries rules the head, and this is happening in all in your first house, which is also known as the helm. This is another word for the first house. So it is definitely where you are meeting life head on right now. And we start off with April 9th, which is Mars moving into Aries. This is definitely immediate as this is your natal ruler, right? So you feel the surge, you feel the energy return after that long Mars in Pisces transit that has been being part of your 12th house. So motivation is returning. Definitely your impatience is also returning. There is a strong desire to take initiative right now, to move and to do, and to just like stop waiting for that these perfect conditions and just like create them. So you may feel more visible, more charged, more aware of yourself as the one who has to act first, which is something that, to be fair, also usually depending on where your natal Mars is, if you are an Aries rising, but it is oftentimes something that comes more natural to you. Um, but again, at this point, the action comes more from instinct than from full clarity. So that is not necessarily wrong, but it does mean you are moving before the whole story is known. We get to April 13th, whereas Mars conjuncting Neptune, and this is where the picture gets a bit more complicated first, and you may feel inspired and magnetized and drawn towards a new version of yourself, but the edges are still a bit blurry. There can be projections around your identity, around what you think you are becoming, and around what you think this new chapter means. So you might feel an enormous inner pull and still not be fully grounded in what exactly you're doing. And this can make you courageous, certainly, but it can also make you impulsive in a way that is based more on fantasy, hope, or symbolic meaning than on what is actually fully viable. I made the example before when I was talking about the transit that this can feel a bit like getting thrown into the Hunger Games arena, where initially you're just kind of there and everyone's running towards the weapons and to get their things, and it's about survival, and the story is not yet fully clear. Yes, then we get to April 16th, which is Mars sextiling Pluto. And this is one of the strongest moments in these transits for you. This is happening across your first and your fourth house. So a deeper layer of power becomes available, and you may realize that there is more control, more resilience, more strategic force in you than you first assumed. Also, I'm sorry, did I say fourth house? That is Jupiter. Guys, I'm so sorry. I meant your first and 11th house. Goddamn. Uh sorry for that one. Your first and 11th house are getting activated, right? So in any case, if the Neptune conjunction made things feel a bit foggy, this helps you cut through some of that and act with greater penetration and tension. And some of the help might actually be coming from your friends, from your community, and the people that you surround yourself with. Right. Okay. Then on April 17th, we get the new moon in the sign of Aries. This is also happening in your first house. I didn't put the new moon here, but it is happening in your first house. There's already so many planets in there. And this reinforces that whole reset, and a new chapter of identity, self-definition, or embodiment is opening for you. And this is not just who do I want to be, or but like what am I actually willing to do in order to become that? Because Aries does not just imagine itself into being, it initiates, right? Something that I have been mentioning before, but in case you didn't watch the archetypal explanation, to do something you have never done, you must become someone you have never been. That is that moment for you. That is that moment for you. Then we get to April 20th, where we have Mars conjunct Saturn and Mercury. This is happening all in your first house. And this is the moment where the breaks kind of come in. Pressure, responsibility, and resistance and consequences chime in at your door. And this can definitely feel frustrating if you were hoping to move freely, but it is not here to destroy momentum. It is here to refine the momentum, really. So Saturn asks whether this new version of you can hold perform and like carry that weight and survive contact with reality. And Mercury adds mental pressure and important conversations with yourself, decisions, planning, and the need to think more clearly about what it is that you are doing or planning to do. Then on May 1st, we get the full moon in the sign of Scorpio in your eighth house. I also didn't put this moon in here, but this is your eighth house, so this is going to be happening right here. That's Scorpio full moon on May 1st. And this brings forth emotional truth, vulnerability, and entanglements, shared resources, and relational intensity with the people that you feel like entangled with, right? Like there's an intensity that gets into the picture with other people involved. So you are not just becoming someone in isolation, you are becoming someone in relation to others as well. And that means fears, dependencies, power dynamics, and intimacy issues may be surfacing. But if your new self-image is flimsy, this full moon is gonna show you. I like that this is happening after we get that Mars, Saturn, and Mercury conjunction, because this is literally like you're getting tested right away. You're getting tested right away. And I feel like you guys might actually enjoy that. Then we get to May 5th, where we have a Mars square Jupiter in Cancer. So, okay, this is where your fourth house, this is where your fourth house gets activated. And now the tension becomes obvious between your self-assertion and your foundations, your home, your family, and your emotional security and your private life, or your internal base that they may not be moving at the same speed as your personal momentum. So there can be an overextension and overconfidence or pushing a bit too hard, and you may feel like you want everything to change at once. But I do think Jupiter here in your fourth house. Again, I think a lot of wisdom for you, Aries. Like, yes, there is a big emphasis on your first house, but at the same time, there is help, from Jupiter in your fourth, from Pluto in your 11th, and that full moon that we have in Scorpio in your eighth. That is kind of being like, hey, other people are also important. And there's actually a lot of, peace and transformation and like solace that you can find by also extending to others and letting them show you, right? Because we need others to be our mirrors so that we can actually fully improve ourselves. Right. So a deeper story for you, dear Aries risings, to summarize all of this. This is a transit of initiation, but not pure simplicity. So you begin with instinct and move through fog. You regain power, you hit reality, and then get tested emotionally. So you are becoming someone new, but this transit is asking whether that new self can be embodied, structured, and sustained. This is what I have for you, dear Aries. Let me know how you're feeling down in the comments below. I'm sending you lots of love, and we're gonna talk to each other very soon. Bye. Taurus suns and Taurus risings. Hello, hello, and welcome to your Mars in Aries horoscopes. Mars is going to be activating, well, the whole Aries stellium is really activating your 12th house, which is the house of the hidden things, the private and the subconscious, the unconscious, where we go to retreat. It's a house of solitude, of endings, and what has been operating behind the scenes. Now, that is a very loud behind the scenes that you are getting, dear Tauruses. Um, because that whole Aries stellium is active. Like it's very, like your 12th house is very, very loud. So I'm wondering just how much behind the scenes this will actually be. But, the thing is, I think with the 12th house stuff, it might just be things that are not necessarily open up to the public. It might be things you're going through like in isolation, or you go into a retreat and there's like a lots of things going on there. It's just things you don't necessarily share publicly. It's not the 10th house. Which is like a lot more public. So we have Mars enters Aries on April 9th for you, well, for everyone. And again, this is how should I put this? Something is beginning to move underneath the surface for you here. Like there's a restlessness that may increase with you. Irration may rise without a clear target. There can be more dreams, intense dreams, stronger unconscious material that is coming to the surface, a need for privacy or an urge for privacy, or the sense that something internal is being stirred up before it is ready to emerge externally. And this is often a preparatory transit, and energy is building, but not always in a visible way. But I will say, you also have Venus, your ruler, transiting your first house. So I do think there is also, like, while all that 12th house activity is going on, I feel like well, it can go in two ways, right? Like Venus can also sometimes be very good with famed appearances. Like everything seems good on the surface, like you might be showing up at work like you're looking your best and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, Marissa is looking amazing." But then like behind the surface with all that Aries stuff in your 12th house, there's actually so much going on, but people can't like you're still just looking so good. Like you don't seem like there is so much havoc happening in your life. Like this is kind of what this is giving me the vibes right now. On April 13th, we have Mars conjunct Neptune. Again, your 12th house, this can feel especially slippery for you because both Mars and Neptune are moving through a house that already deals with obscurity and things you cannot fully see. So, old patterns, grief, avoidance, fatigue, spiritual longing, escapism, or hidden anger may surface. And it can be difficult to know what is intuition and what is projection and what is healing and what is self-sabotage and what is surrender and what is confusion. So the key here is that not everything needs to be acted on immediately. Some things need to be witnessed first. And you're probably one of the only signs, because this is just going on your 12th house, that is probably digesting everything that is going on in a way that is not directly about taking action, or at least a lot of the action that might be taking place is through like therapy work, grief work, through your dreams. Like you might be having very intense dreams. Like the 12th house is such a place for things surfacing in our dreams. So I highly recommend, if you're feeling very destabilized right now, and you also, dear Tauruses, at least in the beginning, until what is it? April 20 26th, yes. Just so I got the day right. April 26th or April 25th, depending on where you are. You still have Uranus at 29 degrees of Taurus in your first house. Like you're definitely in a period that can be easily destabilizing. And I do just want, I don't want to sugarcoat things if they're not. If you're going through a rough time, like please seek out help, seek out a therapist. I'm very, very serious about that. If you cannot find the grounding within yourself, like if it's not enough. Okay, we have on April 16th, we have Mars sextiling Pluto in Aquarius in your 10th house. So there is something quietly powerful that is happening between your private inner life and your public direction. A realization behind the scenes may alter your career path, your goals, your public role, or how you understand your obligations. And this is one of those moments where an internal shift begins to have an outer consequence to it, even if nobody else can see the source of it yet. Again, this is the part where, Marissa comes back at work and all of a sudden everyone's like, where the heck did that transformation and change come in? And it's going to be even louder because just one day after we get the new moon in the sign of Aries. I didn't put the new and full moons in here, but this is happening also in your 12th house. So where all the other um, planets are in in Aries. So this is a hidden reset. Again, something ends, something begins. It's a death rebirth cycle, but it may not yet be speakable necessarily. A cycle of retreat, of purification, of inner confrontation, or silent preparation that is underway. And this could also be a point where you commit to releasing a pattern that has already drained your vitality for way too freaking long. If the new moon in Aries is good for anything, it's amazing to sever things. And one thing that I want to say about the 12th house is that, you know, it makes you aware of your hidden self-sabotaging patterns, but it makes you aware of your hidden and self-sabotaging patterns. That means once you see them, you can actually do something about them. And there's just so much going on for you in that 12th house. I think that new moon is a great way, if if you're a witchy girl guy, to do some of that emotional cord cutting and severing. I think that is extremely good for you, dear Taurus suns and risings. On April 20th, we get Mars conjunct Saturn and Mercury. Once again, all happening in your 12th house. This can feel mentally very heavy, old fears, intrusive thoughts, exhaustions, and harsh inner narratives. Or you need to confront something you have postponed may become very, very like painfully obvious. But there is usefulness here too, because Saturn can help you contain what Neptune has blurred in the beginning, and Mercury can help you name what has previously been formless or not nameable. This is kind of, I feel like, that transit where once you realize it's just shadows, it's not actually real monsters, you're like, oh, I can actually face this. So this is not always pleasant, but it can be very, very clarifying. And I do think that is what you need right now. Then on May 1st, we get a full moon in the sign of Scorpio in your seventh house. I didn't mark it here, but this is happening here in your seventh house. Full moon in Scorpio is ruled by Mars. That's why I'm taking it within this whole story. And this is where the relational mirror appears. And what has been moving internally becomes visible through partnership to close one-to-one dynamics, conflicts, or other people's emotional responses to you. And so if you have been suppressing anger, grief, or truth, relationships may reveal that, right? Like you have both of your 7th and your 12th house are ruled by Mars. So Scorpio and Aries. So there is a lot, sometimes, as a Taurus rising, especially, um, having that hidden 12th house being Mars ruled can all of a sudden just bring in so much suppressed anger where you're like, I don't even know where this came from. But then it's through other people, through that 7th house, through close partnerships, where sometimes you can realize, like sometimes they may be triggering, but it's actually mirroring, like it's helping you to bring forth that anger and to process it. So again, this is very much a interlinked process here, on that full moon in Scorpio that we have on May 1st. Then we get to May 5th, where we have Mars square Jupiter in Cancer. This is happening in your 3rd house and your 12th house. So mental overstimulation is absolutely possible here. Maybe you're having too many conversations, too many interpretations, too many stories. You may feel compelled to explain, defend, or verbalize something that is still raw, but there can be like nervous system straining, like your nervous system, like be careful about your nervous system here, overthinking or emotional flooding through communication, because this is a transit where you can easily overextend your mental capacity. And all these things that you're going here, like make sure you don't land in the realm of trying to over explain yourself to people that won't get it anyways. This is also the house of siblings. Maybe if you have been having a difficult time with a sibling, I think it's just like it can also be emotionally healing. Like this is a square aspect. It is something that can be overcome, but it can also be a time when it comes to your siblings or sibling-like relationships where it's just like they won't get it. Like they won't get how they hurt you when you were little. Like, and it doesn't do any good to unnecessarily try to over-explain yourself during these moments. But there is also, I think it can go both ways with squares. So, and to kind of sum up your story here, this transit is not asking you to rush into visible action. It is clearing space in the unseen layers first. You are working through what has been hidden, preparing for a later emergence, and disentangling instinct from subconscious residue. So, again, a heavy hitting transit for you, dear Tauruses. If again, if this is harsh to work through, rage therapy is probably very amazing. Grief therapy, like there's usually always a lot of grief behind rage, and all of this I think can be extremely helpful and useful. Just because things are not so externally focused, it doesn't mean that nothing is happening. There is a lot happening for you just beneath the surface, and it's okay. You don't have to be public with all of it. Like that is completely fine. Okay, this is what I have for you, dear Tauruses. I hope you have a lovely, as far as it can go, transit. I think there's a lot of potential in here. Let me know how you're doing, and we're going to talk to each other very soon. Bye for now. Okay, dear Gemini suns and Gemini risings, welcome to your Mars in Aries horoscope. Mars is activating your 11th house. And well, as a matter of fact, all of Aries, all the planets that are in Aries, which you can see here in this agglomeration, are activating your 11th house, which is the house of friends, of allies, of groups, of networks, of audiences, long-term goals, aspirations, and your vision for the future. On April 9th, Mars enters here, Mars enters Aries, so momentum is building around your future, and you may feel newly motivated around plans, around collaborations, around communities, or a vision that is asking you to be acted upon. And this can be socially energizing for sure. I'm sure you love that. And it can also make you more impatient with spaces or people that are not aligned with where you are headed or where you want to go. Um, I've made that example before. I feel like Aries, what Aries and Gemini kind of have in common is that they're both very like, I want to do this and I want to do this. And again, they share a sextile relationship with each other. And for you, Geminis especially, know Uranus is preparing to enter your first house very soon on April 26th or 25th, depending on where you are in the world, but that weekend. And then you're going to be the star, anyways. Like, there's going to be loads of things going on in your personal life. So, yes, but Mars here in your 11th house wants movement in the direction of your future. And we love that for you. We certainly do. Then on April 13th, we have Mars conjunct Neptune. And this is where idealism enters, and with it, the possibility of distortion. And you may become very energized by a dream or by group or by a hope or a future scenario, but some of it may be more symbolic than actually real. Be mindful during that time of projections around communities or assuming people share your vision more than they actually do, or mistaking inspiration for structure, right? Because you Geminis are very good at sprinting from idea to idea. And again, sometimes something can seem amazingly good at first, and you're like, oh yeah, these people totally align with me, but like you haven't read the fine print yet, and then it's like, yeah, like this can definitely bring disillusionment with a friend group or a long-term goal if reality starts to show cracks in the fantasy. It can be a bit of both. Like that's the power of Neptune. It can illusion just as much as it can disillusion. And it really depends on your personal natal chart of how exactly this is gonna show up. Then we enter April 16th. Mars is sextiling Pluto in Aquarius in your ninth house or across your 11th and ninth house. And there is a deeper shift in your worldview that begins to strengthen your path, your beliefs, your philosophy, which is, your ninth house, your sense of meaning, your teaching voice, your spiritual or intellectual framework. All of this helps stabilize the 11th house vision. And Pluto here gives force to conviction. It asks whether your future is actually rooted in something you profoundly, really, truly believe in. And then on April 17th, one day later, we have the new moon in Aries. This is happening also here in your 11th house. I didn't put the new moon in, but it's here. This opens a new chapter in your aspirations. So, project, audience, alliances, or future direction can truly begin here. It's a great way actually for you. Like, if there's one sign that I would recommend doing a vision board, it's you, Gemini. Like, do a freaking vision board. Yes, but again, because Neptune was involved earlier, this is not just about exciting. This is about discerning which vision actually is yours, right? And I think if you sit down to create a vision board, you can get really concise. You can get really concise about what it is that you actually want to call in for your future. But like having something, that you can put on your wall and that you can engage with daily. This is really why I'm specifically recommending this for you, dear Geminis. And I think also because you just love creating things, uh, you know, snipping up snippets from like magazines and putting them together in a way that only makes sense for you, like that is so Gemini. Um, April 20th, we have Mars conjunct Saturn and Mercury in your 11th house, all happening here. This is, your ruling planet is involved here. So this is when the test arrives. Some goals require discipline. I know you don't like to hear it, but you need to hear it. Some networks demand clearer boundaries. Some collaborations may reveal logistical strain on equal effort or reality-based limitations. And Mercury may bring important talks, negotiations, planning, or sobering information. Like certainly from your side, like certainly from your side. It might not just be from other people, even though the 11th house is from other people, but because Mercury's a ruler, it might be you that is initiating these conversations, being like, hey, what's up, guys? Like, we need to talk about this. And yeah, and Saturn kind of asks whether your long-term direction has real support and real structure. You might really be asked to like pitch your ideas at the leaderboard, um, and tell people your exact dreams. And Geminis, what your energy as an archetype is really good at, and that's it makes it very similar to Aries, is that you have so many ideas and things you want to do, but you can't do them all at once. You can do all of them, almost all of them, certainly in some way, but you can't do it all at once. And this is the type of transit that is asking you to be like, okay, where do we realistically start first? And then eventually we can do everything. Okay, we get to May 1st, where we have the full moon in Scorpio in your sixth house. I didn't put it in, but this is happening here in your sixth house. And this is where your daily life becomes the proving ground. Okay, your habits, labor, health, overwhelm, workflow, and practical effort shows whether your aspirations are sustainable. Does all of this actually bring work-life balance, or is it completely throwing you off? It's one thing to want a future, it's another to build a daily life that can actually carry it. And that full moon is going to show you on May 1st. May 5th, we have Mars squaring Jupiter in Cancer across your 7th and 11th house. So, money, self worth, resources, like your own resources, and energetic capacity come into tension with your ambitions. You may want to invest more than is realistic. So, take on more than your current base can support, or act from inflated confidence around what is possible. It's a transit where I'm like, and maybe that weekend or that day, like, don't go to the casino because especially if it's like with your friends, like it can easily be a transit where you overspend your money because you're like, oh yeah, I do, just one more shot, just one more chance. I'll win the lottery. And it's just like, no, no, it's not gonna happen. Um, so yeah, do be wary on that day to also not overspend, especially on your friends. Yes, like if someone's luring you in on a party weekend, like just be very mindful. Be mindful. Um, yes, but other than that, also great time. Again, it can always kind of go in either direction, but also great time to maybe to realize, well, where do I need support, like genuine, real support that can financially sustain me. So to sum up your storyline for this Mars in Aries transit. So, this transit asks you to move towards the future, but it also forces you to separate dream from a viable direction. Your ideals need practical scaffolding. You need to take that seriously. Your hopes need labor. Your vision needs a value system and a worldview strong enough to sustain it. Because otherwise, you're easily going to break, and that's not what I want from you. And again, Uranus is soon entering your first house. There's a whole new chapter that is kind of going to be erratic and all over the place waiting for you. But this is not the video for this. There might be Uranus in Gemini episodes coming later on, but this is not relevant for this video right now. But yes, this is what I have for you, dear Geminis. Let me know how you're doing, what you're excited or what you're fearful of, and we're going to talk to each other very soon. Bye for now. Okay, Cancer suns and Cancer risings, welcome to your Mars and Aries horoscopes. Now, Mars is going to be activating your 10th house. And as a matter of fact, this whole Aries stellium that we are having right now is activating your 10th house. So that is pretty prominent. I mean, the 10th house is already a very prominent house, and you're getting the spotlight. I mean, seriously, dear Cancer, the 10th house is your house of career, of reputation, of visibility, of authority, of achievement, of public direction, and your role in this world. So, pretty loud for you. Like, you're definitely being pushed to get out of your shell, dear Cancers. And come April 9th, we have Mars entering the sign of Aries in and of itself in your 10th house. So you're being pushed into motion publicly. Again, the universe is kind of asking you to like go out of your shell, dear Cancer. Career matters right now, leadership uh, is being in question for you right now. Your public identity or a sense of calling may suddenly feel a bit more urgent to you than it usually has, and you may feel less willing to stay passive about your own path. And Mars here can bring ambition, decisiveness, and a desire to really claim a direction and also claim your space in the public. But it can also bring conflict with authority, or a tendency to act before the whole professional picture is fully clear. Dear Cancers, you are ruled by the moon. That means your body is always very, very important. And when this 10th house is getting so activated, I definitely urge you to always get back to your body, because visibility is something that needs to feel safe in the nervous system as well. On April 13th, we have Mars conjunct Neptune in that 10th house, and this is where the public path becomes a bit hazy for you. I mean, the beginning of this transit is certainly a bit hazy, and you may feel inspired by a vision of where you are going, but not fully know how to get there yet. And it might seem like almost a daunting task that is being presented to you right now. There can be loads of projection onto career, onto your public identity, and onto what success is supposed to look like, maybe even from the external world, or like a figure of authority might be imposing onto you of what your career path should look like. So this can be spiritually meaningful for you, but it can also make direction feel very foggy and hazy. There may also be a discrepancy here between how motivated you feel and how clearly defined the path actually is, because you are a sign that oftentimes acts on emotions, and there is nothing like specifically wrong with that. I think emotions are extremely powerful, and it also depends a bit where your natal moon is placed, I will say that. But generally, it's interesting. I feel like that is one thing that you have a bit in common with Aries, because Aries also tends to be a very like, in the moment, and I feel the spark right now and I need to act on it. But again, this can make things a bit like all over the place. Come April 16th, we have Mars sextiling Pluto and Aquarius in your eighth, across your eighth and 10th house. And this gives the whole transit a bit more depth. Shared resources, financial entanglements, trust dynamics, deeper psychological material, or support from others may become very important during that day. And Pluto here can provide leverage, intensity, and access to deeper reserves of power, but it may also reveal that your public direction is tied to emotional or material dependencies that have to be confronted. Like there might be like another person, or a contract, like maybe you're even on a work, okay, because the eighth 10th house sometimes together can speak a lot about work contracts and what you're signing on. So if you are currently interested in a new job, I mean, again, this is your 10th house is very much activated, so I wouldn't be surprised if your career is doing a whole 180, and you might be signing a new contract or something. Like read the fine print and what you're really signing up towards. Like, is it giving you the freedom and the autonomy that you really want to with Aries, or is it making you be in the shell again and repeat past patterns? So yes, April 17, one day later, we have the new moon in Aries, obviously also happening in your 10th house. So a new professional public chapter begins. And again, this might also come in form of a new job being offered to you, or a new career path being offered to you, or just you deciding like I need a whole different life path. Like we talk about career here with the 10th house, but for me the 10th house is also so much about vocation. So really what you would do even if the pay was shit, like something that you're like, I want to do this even after I'm retired. Like I do this with my whole heart. It's really your vocation that you're fully in. And this might be inspiring you to find out what that is. And if you know, if you have been knowing what that is, but you haven't acted upon it, now is the time to actually do that. So, you may set intentions around work, direction, visibility, or achievement during that time. But again, this is not just manifestation language that I'm talking about here. It is about what you're actually initiating through choices and action, what you're actually willing to do for it. And this is that Aries new moon for you guys. On April 20th, we have Mars conjunct Saturn and Mercury, also all here in your 10th house. And now the real weight arise from all of this because responsibilities increase, external demands become more concrete, authority structures, deadlines, criticism, self-doubt, or logistical pressure may intensify. And Saturn asks whether the role you are stepping into is one you are ready to carry. That's what I've been talking about. Like, get back to that nervous system of yours. Like, this needs to feel okay in your nervous system. And it doesn't, it doesn't always have to like fully be okay. Like, it's about regulating. It's about regulating visibility. And in Mercury, especially, can bring announcements, decisions, negotiations, paperwork, or serious conversations that you might be have to willing to make around your work, like asking for that raise, like being bold enough to actually ask for it. The world belongs to the bold and courageous ones that are willing to actually kind of just ask the uncomfortable questions and be willing to be rejected, but maybe also be accepted. So definitely a time for you to be bold there. And when we talk about regulation and nervous system, I think we always have this image of I need to be calm and I need to be rested. But when I'm talking about regulation right now with Aries, is being okay to be with the intensity of Mars, like asking for that raise, being in your body, being present while your voice is probably shaking because that is something you have not done before, and doing it regardless. And that is also regulation, like not leaving your body when all of a sudden you're demanding things and you're craving more visibility. That is regulation for you right now, dear Cancers. And Jupiter in your first house isn't really fucking around either with all of this. So, May 1st, we get full moon in Scorpio in your fifth house. I didn't put an image of the full moon here, but this is happening here in your fifth house. And this brings the axis, and I'm talking about this because that full moon in Scorpio is ruled by Mars in Aries. So this brings the axis of creativity, of desire, of pleasure, romance, and self-expression into the picture. And the question here for you becomes especially, are you creating a life path that still has heart in it? Kind of what I was talking a bit about before. Or has ambition cut you off from aliveness? Emotional truth comes through what you love, what you make, and what feels personally meaningful. Like that Scorpio full moon in your fifth house might be very, very revelatory around what it is that makes you truly joyful, that then probably becomes your vocation or has the possibility to become your vocation. Then we get to May 5th. We have Mars square Jupiter in Cancer across your first and 10th house axis. And it- this is the point where, this can easily be an overreach for you. And you may push yourself too hard, over-identify with your role, or try to force momentum because Jupiter is in your first house. Confidence may be high, but the risk is that you assume sheer sheer feeling or conviction that is enough, that you feel like that is enough to carry everything. And then it's not. It's not always like that. Yeah, so be a bit careful around that time that you're not all of a sudden fooling yourself into overconfidence and all of a sudden you're like a TED speaker on a stage and you're like, I actually haven't even fully prepared anything and now everyone's gonna laugh at me. That's not actually what might happen, but I'm just trying to give you an example. Um, Take care of yourself first. You can, Jupiter in your first house is like really been trying to teach you the lessons ever since Jupiter entered your first house about what it means to pour into yourself first so you can overflow with even greater abundance. Because sometimes, dear Cancers, you're a sign that is very focused on the other and other people. Um, but you also need to focus on yourself first because what you can actually pour out afterwards, whew, even freaking greater. And now let me summarize this deeper story for you. So this is a transit of public initiation, but it is not just simple ambition. You're being called forward, yet you must move through uncertainty, pressure, and deep emotional stakes. The question is not just what do I want to do, but what kind of authority, visibility, and directions can I actually sustain or can sustain me? So, this is what I have for you, dear Cancers. Let me know how you're doing. I wish you a lovely transit, and we're going to talk to each other very soon. Bye. Dear Leo suns and Leo risings, welcome to your Mars in Aries horoscope. Mars is activating your ninth house, which is the house of beliefs, of philosophy, of truth, of higher learning, of traveling, of religious pursuits, spiritual pursuits, publishing, teaching, and long range visions. And Mars entering Aries on April 9th, and really, I mean, that whole Aries stellium here in your ninth, this brings a strong desire for expansion. You want movement, you want truth, you want perspective, you want meaning, and you may feel newly energized around maybe teaching or studying or speaking and writing, traveling, or acting on a conviction that is very personally strong for you. And the urge here is to go further, to go farther, and in life, mentally, spiritually, geographically, or philosophically. It's for me, the ninth house is very much the house of pilgrimages, but it can also be a mental pilgrimage. It doesn't necessarily mean that you always are traveling abroad, but it can also very much be a time where you're like, let me book that flight. Like Aries ninth house for you, like Mars ninth house for you is very much, especially right now, I feel like you might have a big urge to just book that random flight and go to a new location just to find yourself completely anew. Because Mars in the night wants to move towards a new horizon. Yes, but we get on April 13th, we get the Mars conjunct in Neptune first. So the horizon might not be fully clear yet. And you may feel inspired by a spiritual or philosophical vision or a teacher, but not all of it is grounded yet. This can be certainly a beautiful transit for symbolic imagination, for faith and big picture intuition. But it can also be one where you are overstimulated and your certainty or project or ideals onto a path that has not yet proven itself yet. Might get a bit hazy here. So, what do you actually know, and what are you hoping is true? The ninth house. For me, even though it is the joy of the sun, has a bit of a Jupiterian connotation here, where there is a lot of faith and trust that is coming to the ninth house. That's why, again, it feels like a pilgrimage. It's that. And right now, with Aries, with the first sign of the zodiac, it is very much like Frodo in The Lord of the Rings that is going on an adventure. Or was it The Hobbit? I'm actually not sure, but I mean, both, all of them are Hobbits. But basically, going on an adventure. And it's a bit like the Fool card, where you don't know yet. You're kind of stepping into the unknown. Like Aries, like Saturn and Neptune entering Aries have unlocked a whole new world map. And now it is so much about exploration. And for you, it might really be the urge to like philosophically explore and go there with your mind in whatever way, shape, or form. Or again, travel, like go to new cultures and experience yourself anew. Yes. April 16th, we have Mars sextile Pluto in Aquarius, across your ninth and seventh house here. So relationships become part of this transformation. And another person, a partner or a collaborator or even an opponent, because the seventh house is also the house of open enemies, profoundly shape your beliefs during this time. And Pluto in the seventh, it deepens relational encounters, and those encounters in turn sharpen your worldview. Someone may challenge your truth and make it more real. That is what Pluto, I mean, Pluto is going to be in your seventh house for a long while, but this is still a very fresh new transit. And especially because we have one day later on April 17, we have a new moon in Aries. This is really a new beginning for you, and it might be initiated by another person, someone you deeply trust, or again, someone you go traveling, you go abroad, you meet a new person, a guru or a spiritual teacher, somebody that you can bond and be close with, and they change your worldview. It might really be coming from another person, this change and transformation. And then on April 17th, with the new moon in your ninth house, a new chapter begins around learning, around teaching, around meaning, about publishing, travel, or spiritual direction. And the ninth house is not just abstract thoughts. It is a set of frameworks, right? The ninth house is so much about frameworks by which you orient your life towards, because our worldviews create worlds. That is the ninth house for you. And this new moon asks what new road you are willing to step onto. What new journey, what new adventure. It's kind of a fun house, okay? It's enshrined to your first house, so it is a fun place to have all these Aries stuff happening in. Then April 20th, we have Mars conjunct Saturn and Mercury, all happening in your ninth house. And this is where your beliefs are going to get tested. And not every idea can survive contact with reality. That's kind of just how it is, right? These are the frameworks, and now the frameworks are being tested. And not every path is as open as it first seemed. There may be administrative issues, travel frustrations, educational pressure, legal or formal constraints, or simply the sobering realization that meaning must be lived, not just proclaimed. Like, that is the journey of the ninth house. Like, are you just talking, or are you actually embodying? Mercury helps certainly to name the issue, and Saturn demands intellectual and moral seriousness. So it is a good time to undergo a spiritual journey, dear Leos. And certainly that's going to be even more prominent this summer when Jupiter enters your first house. It's going to be a big one for you. On May 1st, we have the full moon in Scorpio in your fourth house. I didn't put an image of the full moon here, but it's happening here in your fourth house, which brings topics around your roots, around your home, family, emotional foundations, and inner security into the picture of all of this. And why am I also talking about the full moon in Scorpio? I'm talking about this because Mars is the ruler of Scorpio. So it's influencing, Mars in Aries is influencing that full moon in Scorpio on May 1st. So what you believe must now be integrated into how you live it. Grand ideals are one thing, the actual emotional ground of your life is another. And this full moon may reveal whether your quest for truth is helping you feel more rooted or less rooted. And I can't help but think of the Ram Dass quote here, which I'm probably not going to say it exactly as he said it. But, if you want to see really how spiritual you are, go have a dinner with your family. I feel like that might be that Scorpio. Like, it's super easy when you're traveling and when you're abroad and like you're in an ashram and you have your spiritual teachers to feel aligned and amazing. But go back to your roots and to your home and your family, and you're going to see how really spiritual you are, like how embodied you really are. Anyhows, May 5th, we have Mars square Jupiter in Cancer, curse your ninth and 12th house. This can steer inner overwhelm. Oh, why did I do a thumbs up now? LMAO. Thumbs up, dear Leos. Okay, sorry. Ninth and 12th house is activated. So this can steer inner overwhelm, private unrest, spiritual inflation, or unconscious excess. So you may feel pulled between the clarity you seek and the murkier emotional or psychic material that is also surfacing, especially after that Scorpio full moon. And there is a risk of acting on blind faith without enough containment. That is definitely what I would urge you, take a step back. I feel I actually like the benefics in the harsh houses. Jupiter traveling through the 12th can sometimes serve very much as a protective factor, because Jupiter is a protective planet from those harsh 12th house topics. So it might be a bit easier to like access those realms and really like pull something from that. But at the same time, with the square configuration, like the ninth and 12th house together is yeah, it can easily clash, and you can, well, one thing when it comes to like a lot of spirituality that I have found true for my life, and I've also heard from so many people, because I grew up in a spiritual community, so know a lot of people around me on their spiritual paths. But one thing that can happen a lot on the spiritual path is that we get initiations or things that we're not ready for. And one thing that we do when we are doing daily meditation, daily practices, and mantra chantings, and all these things is to actually prepare your nervous system that when these moments come of emotional overwhelm or like that grand initiation, we can actually hold it. We don't get overwhelmed by it. This, though, I will say, is a moment where I feel like very easily it can be an overwhelming moment and you all of a sudden you expand things and it's just a bit too much too fast too soon and mentally it can be very hard to catch up, so do watch out for nervous system overwhelm around May 5th, and make sure that if you're expanding your spiritual mind to also ground your physical body, because at the end of the day you're still a mortal human being. Okay, and let me now summarize this deeper story for you guys, for you, dear Leos. This transit expands your horizons, but it also tests your beliefs. So you are not just reaching outward for meaning, you're being asked to distinguish conviction from fantasy and truth from projection so that what guides you is something lived and embodied. That's where you want to go. So this is what I have for you, dear Leos. Let me know how you're doing with all of this. I wish you a most wonderful time, and we're going to talk to each other very soon. Bye for now. Virgo suns and Virgo risings. Hello, and welcome to your Mars and Aries horoscopes. Mars is going to be activating your eighth house, which is the house of intimacy, of vulnerability, of shared resources, of depths, of obligations, trust, fear, loss, inheritance, and the deeper psychic contracts between people. I mean, whew, there's a lot going on in the eighth house, and it's not just Mars activating that eighth house of yours. It's we have a whole Aries stellium activating that eighth house of yours. And now initially April 9th, Mars enters Aries, and the intensity immediately increases because the eighth house is not casual. Okay, this is not a casual house, and Mars here can sharpen issues around emotional exposure, sexual charge, financial entanglement, and dependency control, and the things you owe or are owed. And you may feel more reactive in close dynamics or more determined to confront something that has been simmering beneath the surface, especially if there's, lots of like anger issues or resentment or disappointment or things that have been happening in these close, intimate relational dynamics that have not been spoken about. And this is very much a transit of death and often of confrontation for you. Having Mars slash Aries be present in your eighth house, like you, dear Virgos, certainly oftentimes there is, things brew beneath the surface. And then all of a sudden you realize, like, oh, actually, I'm actually deeply resentful for that person. And, like you're the sign that is a bit ride or die, maybe not like Scorpio in that way, but very much in a like if you see the value in someone, you're gonna help them, you're gonna do anything for them. You're gonna like go and clean their house, you know and secretly sometimes if you're doing it from a place of expecting something in return, or subconsciously, right? Because the eighth house is an aversion to the ascendant. The ascendant doesn't fully see that eighth house. And so things might brew beneath the surface, and all of a sudden you realize, freaking hell, actually, there's so much rage and resentment and depression and grief that I have actually never let out. But if I do, this is gonna ruin the whole relation, or at least you think it's gonna ruin the whole relationship. But actually, what's gonna ruin the relationships is not being honest about these things. And I think this is what the Aries stellium in your eighth house is really trying to teach you right now. That if there isn't clarity, you create the clarity. You create the clarity. That is how you take back your power. Mars and Aries is about taking back your power when it comes exactly to these topics that are difficult and that are hard. Shared reason, like the eighth house is so hard because it has to do with the entanglements that we have for other people, and often contracts, spoken or unspoken, obligations that we have towards them, spoken or unspoken. So it's usually not relationships that we can just be like, oh, bye, I'm gone. No, it's like we sometimes have obligations to people. We can't just like fuck off. And it's like, how can I be there for others without fully losing myself? This big, 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 big question for you, dear Virgos. Um, and we start off, the first transit that we are getting, April 13th, is Mars conjunct Neptune. And this is definitely like immediately, it's kind of like blurring boundaries here in intimacy and shared dynamics. So you may not see things fully clearly. Like it starts off a bit hazy, I'm going to be honest. And there can be projection around trust, around other people's motives, around shared money, around emotional merging, or around sacrifice. You may feel drawn into something profound, but it may not yet be fully defined. And excuse me, this can also bring confusion around who is carrying what, who is responsible for what, and where the line is between compassion and self-erasure, kind of what I've been talking a bit about before. And then come April 16th, we have Mars sextile Pluto in Aquarius in your sixth house. Okay, so your eighth house is getting activated. So your daily life, work, health, routines become part of the deeper transformation here. Pluto in the sixth says that practical reality matters for you. And of course it does. You're a Virgo. So the way you organize your days, your energy, your body, and your labor has direct consequences for these eighth house situations that are going on. And the sextile can this sextile, but maybe also sex, I don't know, can help you regain power through habits, structure, and disciplined practical responses. Okay, this is a heavy load. Like the sixth and the eighth house together is a heavy load on the obligations that we have towards others and ourselves. And it's all about, at the end of the day, not losing yourself and still finding, well, as much as you can, the balance. I talked about this yesterday in my video where I don't think Aries is a sign of necessarily finding balance. I mean, Libra, the counterpart of Aries is about finding balance. But Aries is about going into the extremes because through the extremes, that is how we actually find the middle ground. Like, how the heck are you supposed to find the middle ground if you don't even know what like the extreme of one end and the other is? And sometimes you kind of need to go there, or we are pushed to go there. Yes, one day later, on April 17th, we have a new moon in Aries, also happening in your eighth. So a new cycle begins in the realm for you of shared resources, of vulnerability and trust. And this may be a point of beginning around emotional honesty, like where you're finally like, I need to be emotionally honest to myself and to others. Like I owe it to myself and to others around financial agreements that you have with other people, a debt issue maybe, or like, just finances in general that have to be sorted out. It's oftentimes between people, but it can also talk about the government, like government loans and things like that. Or a relationship that might be merging into a next or deeper level. And willingness to confront that, right? Because we can only have true, deep, intimate bonds with people that we can be in conflict with. I think that's a big one for you, dear Virgos. You can only have deep, loving, emotional relationships if you can be in conflict with people. Like if you can, like you're gonna know, you're gonna know if you can, but it comes from you, right? Like you have to be able to handle that as well. Anyhow, April 20th, we have Mars conjunct Saturn and Mercury in your eighth house. And now the consequences become more concrete. There may be hard conversations about money, commitment, responsibility, and emotional boundaries, shared obligations, or psychological realities that need to be taking place. Saturn does not let intimacy remain vague. Saturn wants answers. Mercury presses for explanations, terms, facts, or decisions. And again, this might be coming from you. It might be coming from the other person, but it might also be coming from you. So this can feel heavy, but it can also be clarifying in exactly the place that Neptune blurred initially. Yeah, certainly. I think you Virgos are definitely getting one of the more interesting activations just because the eighth house is, in my opinion, one of the most interesting houses. I'm not saying it's an easy house, but it's certainly one of the most interesting houses. Because it lends itself to crises, but crisis always births opportunity. And I think with that Aries energy, there is so much opportunity to really turn your life around. Because all it's so funny that my Zoom puts on these emojis anyhow. to really change your life because your desires, these hidden desires that are so eighth house, because it's about anxieties. The eighth house is 100% about our anxieties, but oftentimes under anxieties are things that we actually need and desire. And this is how you get to the root cause of that. And this is how you actually get to be able to have these fulfilling emotional relationships. Okay, anyhow, I feel like I could talk about the eighth house too much, and then this video is going to be like 2 hours long. Then we get to May 1st. We have a full moon in Scorpio in your third house. I didn't put a picture of the of the full moon here, but it's happening here in your third house. And I'm talking about this because Mars is the ruler of Scorpio. So Mars in Aries is going to be influencing that full moon in Scorpio on May 1st. So words reveal what has been hidden here because, the third house has to do with communication, with documents, conversations, with sibling, with local circumstances, or the stories you tell yourself that are becoming illuminated right now under this full moon. And something emotionally intense may now need to be spoken if it hasn't already. The eighth, third axis suggests that what is deeply felt must become consciously articulated during that full moon for you, especially because it's influenced, by that, because the transit that we have before is Mars conjunct Saturn and Mercury is your ruler. So this is going to be a big one for you. Big one for you to be bold and assertive and speak what it is that you truly want and need. Okay, May 5th, we have Mars square Jupiter in Cancer across your 11th and 8th house. So, friends, networks, or future plans may intensify the whole situations, and you may get too many options, too much group involvement, or overestimate the support available. Social dynamics can complicate what is already emotionally charged during that time. So, if you're getting tens of millions of invitations, maybe step away for a bit because, Virgos, I feel like every time I get to know Virgos, there's like either you're so freaking socially active or you're not. Like I've never really met a Virgo, and comment down below if this is you, then congratulations. But usually, I always just meet two types of Virgos, and they're either like super extroverted and socially active and constantly doing things, or they're very introverted and they're like, I need my time, I need my space, and please don't touch me. But yeah, so if you fall into the first category and you're a very socially active Virgo, this might be a time where, like, just chill a bit more. Like, because you might just, like, your nervous system might just be a bit emotionally too overwhelmed, especially if you're dealing with, these intense things. Sometimes people and the ideas of them in your communities, like I love community, don't get me wrong, but sometimes they can lead you into a direction and put ideas in your head where it's just like it's not useful for these private, intimate things that are going on in the eighth house. Like sometimes the eighth house asks for things to be sacred and private and not put out in the open because the 11th house can just, you know, what do they say? How do they say this in English? Too many cooks in the kitchen, like ruin the batch or something like that. Did I translate that correctly? This is what can happen during that day. Too many beliefs and opinions about other people can maybe ruin these like eighth house processes that are going on in the surface. So yeah, let me summarize the deeper story for you, dear Virgos. So this transit is about the courage to face what is shared, vulnerable, and consequential. It asks you to separate projection from truth in intimacy, to define boundaries where needed, and to move from psychic fog toward explicit reality, because then this year will be extremely sexy for you. I promise. Okay, this is what I have for you, dear Virgos. Let me know how you're doing down in the comments. I wish you a lovely as can be transit. All the power to you. And we're going to talk to each other very soon. Bye. Okay, dear Libra suns and Libra risings, welcome to your Mars and Aries horoscope. Mars is activating your seventh house of relationships, partnerships, close one-to-one dynamics, contracts, clients, close allies, and also open opponents or slash enemies. And this whole, I mean, your seventh house in general is being very activated because we have a whole Aries stellium activating that seventh house for you. So come April 9th, when Mars enters Aries, relationship dynamics become direct and immediate, and other people may feel more forceful, more demanding, more active, or more confrontational to you all of a sudden. Or you may be the one bringing more clarity, assertion, or urgency into your one-to-one connections. Either way, the seventh house is lit up, and this is not a background transit. Okay, this is a, your first seventh house axis when it's activated. That is a loud one. Um, because it means your descendant is here. Like if you're listening to this, especially if you're Libra rising, it means your descendant at some point. Like all the Aries transits are gonna go over your descendant. This is loud. So yeah, Mars in the seventh can bring passion, conflict, decision, attraction, rupture, or negotiation. Loads of things happening here. April 13th, we have the first transit, Mars conjunct Neptune. This is where projection becomes a major, major theme for you. You may idealize someone, misunderstand someone, or act from a fantasy about what a relationship is or could be. Another person may mirror something to you that is not yet fully clear. Like you might feel very confused to them, and boundaries may feel a bit blurred. Desire and confusion can mix during this transit. Like this transit, the first touch that Mars gets from Neptune can definitely feel a bit like hazy. And this transit can be beautiful for spiritualized or romantic sensitivity, but it can also make you see what you want to see rather than what is actually there. So it starts a bit weird, odd, and bizarre. But then we get to April 16th, where Mars sextiles Pluto in Aquarius in your fifth house. And this gives depth and seriousness to the relational story that you're currently going through. So issues of romance, desire, pleasure, children, creative expression, or emotional intensity become intertwined with the seventh house activation that is already going on. And Pluto in the fifth can bring powerful attraction, obsession, or transformational creative slash emotional experiences. And with nah, I'm stuttering, sorry. So what happens in partnership is now reaching, more in depth than just polite surface level relating. Okay, like maybe, Pluto, Pluto certainly for you Libras that like to be socially active, is bringing in a tone of like, you're not just dating for fun, you're dating for marriage, but you need to be serious about what it is that you actually want. And you're the masters of mirroring, dear Libras. That is what you do so well. You're very emotionally and socially strong in like understanding dynamics that are happening around people, around partnerships. But that often can sometimes feel like the focus is, away from you. Um, but all these activation in your seventh house, and I know it's your seventh house that is being activated, but I do think, the seventh house is always a mirror to the first house. So it's really mirroring back to you about where you're lacking self-assertion, because Aries creates clarity through action and to taking action steps and not about waiting how the social dynamics unfold and observing. It's like, no, I'm going to create the social dynamics. Like I can play a part in this too. One day later, after April 16th, on April 17th, we have a new moon in Aries in your seventh house. And this is definitely where a new chapter in your relationship life begins. And this could mean a new connection, a reset in an existing one, a new understanding of what you want from partnership in general, or a fresh conflict that forces honesty. And the important thing is that the old relational script is not simply continuing unchanged. Like you need to be changing something when it comes to how you're relating to other people. Especially people that are close to you, like deep, intimate one-on-one relationships. Then on April 20th, we have Mars conjunct Saturn and Mercury, all happening in your seventh house. And this is the first reality check. So commitments, boundaries, responsibilities, difficult conversations, agreements, incompatibilities, or structural weaknesses in relationships come into view during that time. And Saturn asks whether this connection can hold weight, and Mercury demands articulation. Those things may have to be named clearly now, which I know is not always easy for you, dear Libras, but that is what is being demanded of you. And this is where idealization starts giving way to terms, consequences, and practical truth. Okay, this is like, I think Aries is really pushing you a bit into the corner here, Libra, where it's like you play a very big role in like social dynamics and what people end up in your life. Okay, because one of the big things that we always have to face when it comes to attraction is that that is what we are attracted to. That is who we are attracted to. And we choose at the end of the day, it's we who are choosing. And sure, it might be based on trauma and unhealthy patterns, but in the end of the day, we choose who we engage with more deeply, who gets access to our lives. Like that is, we play that role. Like people don't just come into your life and trample into your life. Like you willingly give access. At some point, that is what you do. And that is a responsibility that we carry. And I think, Aries in that seventh house is really pushing you towards realizing that just how much of a role you also play in these dynamics and where is it that you need to take responsibility, like a real responsibility, and where is it that you actually need to take less responsibility because sometimes you carry the weight of the world in trying to, Libra does so much invisible labor in the back, of fitting, like, balancing things out socially for everyone. And it's like maybe stop, like, maybe do that less, maybe do that less when Aries is activating your seventh house. On May 1st, we have a full moon in Scorpio, which is activating your second house. Why am I talking about this? This is happening here. I don't have a picture. I'm sorry, guys. I'm talking about this because the ruler of Scorpio, Mars, is Mars in Aries during that time. So it's absolutely influencing. That full moon is going to be relevant for this transit as well. So, your self worth, your values, your money, and your sense of personal stability come into the picture. Relationships are not just about feeling, they affect what you value, what you allow, and how resourced you feel. So, this full moon may reveal whether a partnership supports your value system or undermines it. A very, very important time for you, for sure. And it might also be a bit of an icky time, if we're being honest. Um, Again, where you're like, oh, I actually, I play a big part in all of this. On May 5th, we have Mars square Jupiter in Cancer in your 10th house. So, your public life, career direction, and external responsibilities can come into tension with relational dynamics. And you may want too much from both realms at once or feel stretched between your relational needs and your public obligations. Especially if you are just starting out relationships or you're just starting out a job, or maybe you're just maybe it's both. Maybe you're starting a new relationship and a new job. And this is in this transit can really make you feel pulled in both directions. And when things are new and not yet like fully clear and defined, like both of these areas can, and the 10th and the seventh house are you know are fixed, uh our angular houses, that is the word I was searching for, not our fixed, our angular houses, they're very loud. They're very, very loud. And when both of them or two of them feel a bit unstable and shaky, it can be a bit hard. So, yes, just be aware of, finding a balance and bringing it back to yourself at the end of the day. Okay, bringing it back to yourself. Let me summarize this deeper story arc for you, dear Libras. So there's transit forces relationship reality into the open. It begins with activation and projection, then demands clarity, boundary, and structure. You are learning not just how to relate, but how to see both yourself and the other person without illusion. This is what I have for you, dear Libras. I hope you're doing well. Let me know how you're doing down in the comments. I wish you a most lovely transit. All the power to you. And we're going to talk to each other very soon. Bye for now. Okay, dear Scorpio suns and Scorpio risings, Mars, your ruler, is activating your sixth house. So, this is a very important transit for you. Wherever Mars is doing is also always inadvertently affecting you just because it is your ruler. And the sixth house is about your work, about your labor, about your daily routines and habits, about your health, discipline, service, maintenance, and the daily systems that just keep life functioning, essentially. And let me just briefly take a sip of water. I forgot to do this before I started, which is funny because I'm a Scorpio rising too. So, and what I'm doing right now is literally my activation. But anyhow, let's get, it's really the whole Mars stellium that is activating your sixth house. So your sixth house is very, very loud this time around. And April 9th is when initially Mars moves into Aries, so you may feel compelled to fix, improve, organize, attack a problem, clean something up or get moving with greater efficiency. And the sixth house is where life becomes practical. The sixth house is about the practical things we need to do in day-to-day life to sustain ourselves, our health. Mars here can bring productivity, sharper focus, and more willingness to confront what is not working, but it can also bring irritation, burnout, overwork, or conflict in everyday environments if not managed well. So do be a bit careful, dear Scorpios. On April 13th, this is the first transit we are getting. We have Mars conjunct Neptune, and it's a bit of a confusing start, I will admit that, because there's a lot of haziness that kind of enters the daily rhythm of your life. You may feel energized one moment and then foggy the next moment, and routines may feel a bit like split up, and work expectations may be unclear, and health signals may be harder to interpret. There can be a tension between wanting to act decisively and not quite seeing what the real issue is. And this can also show up is trying to save a situation at work without enough boundaries, really. Um, yes. So again, it's a bit of a hazy start, a bit of a confusing start, but then we get to April 16th, where Mars sextiles Pluto in Aquarius in your fourth house. This is a big one for you. um, you know, Mars being your traditional ruler, and I'm gonna say it here, even though I'm a traditional astrologist, but Pluto being your modern ruler. So this one is certainly big for you. So your home, family, emotional foundations, and private life are deeply implicated in your ability to function daily. Especially if you're a person that is working from home, this might really change things up. Pluto here suggests that the restructuring of your inner base gives you more power in your work and habits. And the 4-6 link, like axis, says that your routines are not separate from your emotional ground. So you really have the ability here to create changes in your home life and how they affect your work. It's very much a, work-life balance type of transit that is being brought here to the forefront. One day later, on April 17th, we have the new moon in the sign of Aries. So there is a new chapter for you that is beginning around your work, health, and daily rhythms. And this is a reset of your habits, of systems, of practical effort that you have been putting into things. And it can be a good time to initiate a new discipline. It's a great time. Like, if there's one sign I would recommend going to the gym or starting to work out, it's you and your Scorpios. And like, I'm here with you. I'm literally starting with a new personal trainer. I've never had a personal trainer until now, but I'm in the vibe. I highly suggest you do the same. Or just go to the gym, or if that is, I know that not everyone has the financial capabilities. You can also just start with free YouTube videos. Like, I think there's always, you can always find things that are suitable for your current situation. There shouldn't be any excuses right now. I certainly think so. Or you might even, I feel like this is actually transits where you catch yourself where you are making excuses. But again, overall, this transit is still reminding you to not confuse urgency with clarity. Like, maybe you want to completely twist your life upside down, and you're like, now I'm gonna work out every day, and it's like, yeah, maybe turn it down a notch and start walking a lot first, and start incorporating this type of exercise. Like, don't do it all at once, because Mars is still the planet of injuries, and you might easily injure yourself, and then your health suffers unnecessarily if you just turn it down a notch and, you know, ran, you know, just ran these amount of miles and not overextended yourself. So this is what I definitely want to lay to heart to you, dear Scorpios. Like, don't over push yourself this month. You want, and this is also Saturn. We're going to talk about that. Yeah, actually, no, let's talk about that now because that is April 20th. That is the next transit. Mars conjunct Saturn and Mercury. This is where discipline becomes unavoidable and things get more serious. Responsibilities increase, flaws in your systems show up. There may be deadlines, exhaustion, problem solving, physical reality checks. That's what I've been talking about. Or conversations that require precision. So Saturn insists that the daily structures must be capable of carrying real weight. And Mercury adds planning, scheduling, diagnosis, logistics, and mental strain. The sixth house also often talks about doctor visits. Make sure to get your checkup, dear Scorpios. If you're feeling something is off, better get your checkups. Or just in general, like, if you're somebody that gets yearly checkup, this is a great time to do so. Sixth house season for every sign is always a great time to get health checkups and just see if everything is all right. Get your blood work done, especially with Mars. Mars rules over the blood. Get your iron levels checked. Mars also rules over iron. Make sure to supplement with iron if you're missing that out. Aries rules over the head, so be careful around injuries around your head. I'm specifically mentioning this for you, dear Scorpios, because your sixth house around health and disease is activated right now. And again, it's a bit of the same coin from different sides. So your daily routines are here to really there might be a bit annoying. I think the sixth house, and I often like to refer to it as the Sisyphus house, is things you kind of have to do that are unavoidable, but you're so happy if you're doing them. Like, it really actually is amazingly good for your health. So, do those extra steps. Don't overdo it, but do those extra steps. Put in the extra work that you know is going to be so good for you. Instead of, doom scrolling or whatever your vices are, just go outside, take for a walk. Like, listen to that YouTube video on your walk instead of laying in your bed. Like, your body is going to thank you for it, and your health is certainly going to thank you for it. And Saturn certainly here is all about like actually taking responsibility for your daily habits and your daily life, because that is how you create the life. That is how you create the life that doesn't feel like you're burned out. Yes. May 1st, we have the full moon in Scorpio in your first house. I don't have an image of that here, but it's happening here, right in your first house, dear Scorpios. And now the impact on you becomes very visible. The accumulated pressure of the sixth house reflects back onto your body, your mood, your identity, your energy, and this full moon can reveal how much your daily life is affecting your sense of self. And it can also bring a personal culmination. So you see more clearly what this whole process has been about and has been doing to you mentally, physically, spiritually. Definitely a big, big one for you, right? Like new and full moons in the first house, always, always big. Then on May 5th, we have Mars square Jupiter in Cancer in your ninth house here, across your ninth and sixth house. So things around beliefs, around travel, around studying, teaching, or big picture thinking can clash with practical daily demands. And you may want to move beyond the mundane, but reality still requires management. And there is a risk of overextending yourself because you believe more is possible than your daily capacity can actually support you. Like, that is yeah, like, definitely look out for that day to not overreach and overstretch yourself, because just because you think you can do something doesn't mean you actually can. Like, the physical body has limitations, and if your health is on the line, it's always good to step it down a notch. Speaking here from personal experience as someone with a natal Saturn in Aries in the sixth house. If you're a Scorpio rising and you have any Aries placements in your sixth house, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You gotta take care of yourself first, and yeah, sometimes you're more capable than you think. Sometimes your physical body also has real limitations, and you gotta take them seriously. And that is the day where you really do. So let me summarize that story for you guys, for you, dear Scorpios. This transit is about the refinement of daily life. It is not glamorous, but it is powerful. And you're being asked to move from reactive fixing and foggy effort into discipline, embodied, sustainable systems that actually support you. This is what I have for you, dear Scorpios. Let me know how you're doing down below in the comments. I'm sending you much love and a wonderful transit, and we're going to talk to each other soon. Bye for now. Dear Sagittarius suns and Sagittarius risings, Mars is going to be activating your fifth house, the house of creativity, of pleasure, of desire, of romance, of children, of play, risk, self-expression, what makes you truly feel alive. And this whole Aries stellium really is activating your fifth house. It's a very big emphasis on your fifth house this time around. Certainly a fun house to have the Aries stuff going on in your life because it's in direct trine relationship to your first house. And, first we have April 9th. This is when Mars initially moves into Aries, and this is energizing for you. This is passion that is rising, desire that is waking you up. And I'm sure you are actually kind of loving that energy right now. So you may feel more expressive, more willing to take risks, more compelled to create, to flirt, to perform, to pursue joy or act from the heart. And the fifth house is where life becomes vivid, and Mars here can restore a sense of aliveness, which I think is maybe, if you're coming from almost like this feeling of a deep winter slumber, is actually very welcome right now. But Mars also intensifies, and it can make desire more urgent and romantic situations more charged and creative instincts more impatient than it actually needs to be. On April 13th, we have the first transit. Mars is conjoining Neptune. And this is where your desire becomes a bit dreamy, becomes a bit symbolic, becomes a bit idealized, and potentially confusing. It is a bit of a confusing initial transit. I will admit that. Romance may be infused with projection, creative vision may feel inspired but not fully concrete, and you may be drawn toward fantasy or toward an image of what passion is supposed to feel like. And this is beautiful for your imagination, but tricky if you assume that feeling itself is proof of reality. Um, so, but then we get to April 16th, which things get a lot more real, okay? Mars sextiles Pluto in Aquarius in your third during that time. So your words gain a lot more power. Your communication, your writing, your conversations, your messaging and thought patterns start carrying much more weight in the unfolding story of yours. And Pluto in the third can make expression profound, persuasive, obsessive, or downright transformative. And what you say now can intensify romance, creativity, or emotional risk. Like it might be the time where you realize, like, oh, actually, the way I'm thinking, like really impacting how I'm showing up romantically or in my creative visions. It is, with all that Aries stuff, I highly recommend, especially for you, dear Sagittariuses, to read the books on creativity. If it's something that you're newly exploring, you're kind of just coming out of a slumber, highly, highly recommend looking into these books of people that actually live the creative life, okay? You want to read books about the people that actually really live the creative life because they're going to have the advice that might be useful for you to live that out on your day-to-day life. Or again, maybe when it comes to like dating and relationships, right? I mean, there's so much content out there. And if you're intrigued by that, make sure you find a person that you feel like is living the life that you also want to go to. Because I know you're going to understand me on this one, dear Sagittariuses, is that you're one of the signs that is like, I'm only going to follow teachers that actually, live the wisdom they preach. And so find the people that really resonate with you, where you want to go, where you want to head, before just blindly like engaging with them and taking everything at face value that they say, because maybe they're just speaking very well, and not actually living out what they're saying when it comes to romance, when it comes to creativity. For me, the fifth house is very much the house where Eros gets infused. And it's like, what is it that makes you feel alive? Yeah. April 17th, one day later, we have a new moon in Aries, where a new chapter begins in that fifth house of yours, in the realm of joy, of passion, creativity, children, or romantic initiative. And this is a real ignition point because it asks what you want to create and what you're willing to pursue, even without guarantees. And because that fifth house is so active for you, I do want to, and because the fifth house has so much to do with creativity, I do just want to highlight that one thing that really stuck with me that I heard in a podcast sometime, and I really don't know who said that, but it was about if we're not creating, we're usually destroying, and it's mostly ourselves. And I want you to really lay that quote to your heart during this Aries stellium season because it's so easy. That line can get very thin. Can get very thin. And there's so many different ways that we're creating. Again, it can also be procreation, right? Like the fifth house also talks about like sexual engagements and like I like the fun part about like just dating and also casual sex. Like I think that's very fifth house. I think more serious, like soul level deep sex is eighth house. And that's also kind of active with Jupiter here a bit later on. But yes, it's really about like finding where can I create instead of landing in destruction mode. Yes, on April 20th, we have Mars conjunct Saturn and Mercury in your fifth house. And this is where your desire are meeting structures because creative work may require discipline of you during that time. Romance may require a bit more definition. Uh, God forbid a Sagittarius defines anything and cages themselves in. I'm just kidding. But also, am I? A flirtation may confront your reality. A project may need craft, editing, consistency, and patience. Saturn asks whether what feels exciting also has staying power, and Mercury adds conversations, decisions, and mental framing around what you are pursuing. Definitely a day to have a serious conversations with yourself or maybe with a partner. The fifth house also speaks about children. So if you do have kids, this might also be a day where you are having a more serious conversation with a child of yours or a child of maybe a family member or something. If you're close to them, right? Children, you know, you might have a child that's 25 years old, it's still your child. Like, you know what I'm saying? But it might be me a time around that. But if you're also somebody that's trying to conceive, that's trying to get pregnant, this is also, this is the time where you might get a bit more serious and realize like what is actually behind that, what does the whole process of being pregnant entail, and afterwards raising a child. It might also talk about your own inner child because obviously not everyone has physical kids. So a lot of these things and inner child work is always usually so much about creativity and reactivating that creative spark. Creative therapy is definitely something I can highly recommend to you, dear Sagittarius, is right now. Yes, we get to May 1st, where we have a full moon in Scorpio in your 12th house. And why am I mentioning this? Because Scorpio is ruled by Mars. So that Mars in Aries is going to influence that full moon in Scorpio on May 1st. And in your 12th house, it brings hidden emotions, old grief, private material, or unconscious fears into the background of the story for you. And even while the fifth house is asking for self expression, the 12th house reminds you that not all your emotional life is visible or even needs to be visible. And this full moon may reveal that some of your desires are entangled with things you have not yet fully processed. And you need to sit sometimes with the serious things in life, dear Sagittarius. That is the truth of this full moon for you. And then on May 5th, we have Mars square Jupiter in Cancer in your eighth. This is your ruler that is also being activated here. So, and this is where intensity can escalate, not escalate. So, emotional entanglements, sexual charge, financial risk, or overmerging can become issues. If you have any addictions around sex or gambling, things like that may be resurfacing during that time. You may want more than the current container can safely hold, and there is a risk of acting from emotional excess. Be careful around that time to, you know, if for some reason you are a Sagittarius that is going to an orgy, think twice about it and use protection. And if you are, and if you're going to a gambling casino event, also use protection, just different kind of protection. Or maybe just don't go that day because it's very easy to overspend your money and do things. And, God forbid, it's that day you accidentally get pregnant or get somebody else pregnant. And that's probably not what you want. Unless you do, then gosh, by all means, all power to you. Yeah, so just something to be wary and careful of. I will say it's a square. It can also be, fifth and eighth house. It can also be a very beautiful and liberating time if you have a deep bond with someone. You have a very beautiful, liberating, sexual experience or just intimacy, right? It doesn't, intimacy doesn't equal sex or sex doesn't equal intimacy, but it can also be where you're really deeply processing something with someone and you reach a new level of the relationship where it's like, wow, now I feel so much more closer to this person because I opened up. So this can also happen. Many things can always happen, but if I would be talking here about every possible outcome, oof, we would be here for 10 hours, guys. But let me summarize the story for you, dear Sagittarius. As this transit is reconnecting you with your vitality, but it also tests whether what excites you is real, sustainable, and emotionally clean, especially for the long run. And you are learning how to move from fantasy and heat into expressive courage that can actually hold form, which is absolutely what I want for you to happen. So, dear Sagittarius, let me know how you're doing down in the comments. I wish you an amazing transit, and we're going to talk to each other very soon. Bye for now. Capricorn suns and Capricorn risings, welcome to your Mars in Aries horoscopes. Now, Mars is activating your fourth house of home, of family, of roots, ancestry, emotional foundations, private life, and the place from which everything else really grows. I mean, it really is your foundation. And really, this whole Aries stellium is activating your fourth house. So it is a quite loud place this month. And April 9th is the initial spark. This is where Mars enters the sign of Aries. So the private spheres in your life become very active. Your home matters, your family dynamics, your emotional undercurrents, your housing, like if there's housing issues, repairs, and inner unrest, or the need to just reclaim space may become a lot more pressing for you during that time. And the fourth house is not just a literal home. Okay, it is your base, like your body is your home always. The soul that is inhabiting this body, like your body is your first and foremost home. So Mars here can activate old anger, buried urgency, or the need to reassess or reassert yourself where life feels most personal. And there might also be pressure that is coming from your family members. Like that fourth house can sometimes also talk about your family and what they are bringing into your life. So if there are conflicts during that time, it might be a time that is more prominent where conflicts come from your family or things need to get resolved, like just family matters in general, okay? Or again, as I mentioned before, around your home, like maybe something breaks down and things need to be repaired. Also, time I would be specifically uh, keen on not fucking around with fire in your home, okay? Because with this Aries stellium in your fourth house, and Mars being about like injuries and things. It's a time where you can more easily get injured in your home, but also like fire hazards that can happen in your home place or your living space. So do be careful around fire during that time. Yes, please, okay? On April 13th, that is the first transit that we are getting. We have Mars conjunct Neptune, and this can make your home or inner life feel a bit emotionally foggy. It's a bit of a hazy first transit that we are getting. There may be projection onto family, idealization of what home, should be or should feel like, or confusion around your emotional needs, like what it is that you actually truly need from other people, which, for you Capricorns, you usually struggle with needing really anything from anyone. But this might be a time where it gets even a bit more confusing, or you realize I do actually need something from someone, but I don't know. I just don't know. But things are going to get better. Don't worry. Um, and it can also stir grief, nostalgia, ancestral feelings, longing, or a desire to escape into some imagined sense of belonging. This is one of those transits where inner sensitivity and irritability may coexist. You're like, some things from the past may be coming up, but then at the same time, you're like, no, but this is the present moment right now. Yeah, a bit of a back and forth here, especially if you're someone like maybe you live with your family, maybe you don't live with your family. I would say even if you don't live with your family, this might be even more present. Like you go visit them again and you get the surge of like, oh, maybe I should move back to that country where I initially came from. Or maybe I should like go like live again in the neighborhood or the vicinity that I came from, and it's and I'm just like, yeah, just wait a bit. Wait a bit longer. This is a hazy, bizarre first transit. April 16, we get Mars sextile Pluto in Aquarius in your second house. Things get a lot more real then. Values, money, resources, and self-worth become part of this whole process for you. Pluto in the second asks what truly supports you and what gives you power. And this can actually help you make practical choices, which you're usually pretty good at around your home, around your resources, or emotional security with more depth and a bit more seriousness, which again, also nothing that is completely, completely out of the blue with you. But it also always depends. Okay, like if you're a Capricorn rising, it obviously also depends where your Saturn is located because that is going to talk to you about what is going on. And especially if you are a Capricorn rising and you have your natal Saturn in Aries, you're either going through your first or your second, or goddamn, maybe you're watching this, you're going through your third Saturn return. Holy heck, please comment down below if that is you. That means you're like almost 90 or 90. And it's so welcome here. But yes, if you are around the ages of like 27 till 30 or 57 till 60, you're going through your Saturn return right now. And so this is a very poignant time for you, a very, very focused, heavy time for you because Saturn is also very much activated during that time because Saturn is in Aries right now. We have one day later, on April 17th, we have the new moon in Aries happening, and this new chapter for you begins really in your foundations. And this can be literal, again, in your home, family, property, domestic directions, or more psychologically involving your emotional roots and sense of inner safety. And you are not just reacting to the past, you are initiating a new foundation because Aries initiates clarity through doing things, through creating the clarity themselves. And then on April 20th, we have that Mars conjunct Saturn and Mercury. So your ruler Saturn is involved here. And this is where pressure sets in. Okay. So family responsibilities, difficult conversations, structural issues at home or around home, emotional limits, or the need to define roles and boundaries may become unavoidable. Maybe it isn't even necessarily something that you have been avoiding, but that your family members have been avoiding, but when it comes to your own foundation, that certainly maybe is something that you have been avoiding because sometimes, dear Capricorns, you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, and you really gotta be so careful to keep that foundation, that fourth house of your, in a place that is actually sustainable for you. Okay, just because you can actually hold the weight of the world doesn't mean you constantly have to do that. Yeah, and Mercury brings the words that are maybe finally needed, and Saturn brings the weight. And this is where emotional atmosphere gives way to, you know, like what it is that I actually need to do to create a foundation that feels well, I will say secure, but with Aries in the fourth house, or also kind of alive, also kind of a bit alive. Um, Yes. we have on May 1st, we have the full moon in Scorpio in your 11th house. And why am I talking about this? This is happening here, and I'm sorry I don't have an image of the full moon. But I'm talking about this because Mars is the ruler of Scorpio. And so it's influenced, that moon is influenced by what Mars is doing. And because this is happening in your 11th house, the wider social field also responds now during that time. So your friends, your networks, your alliances, your communities, and future goals now reflect the changes that are happening in your base. So the full moon may reveal whether your private restructuring supports the future you want or conflicts with it. It might bring up some, yeah, some nasty feelings. Full moon in Scorpio sometimes does bring it up nasty feelings like old griefs and pains, and maybe you were associated with communities or friends that really brought you down and were not good for you and did not support your dreams. And now this is a moment where it's like detangling yourself. The fourth house has so much to do with like ancestry and family karma. And with that packed Aries stellium, it's really a time for a lot of you Capricorns to step out of the way, to be that first person that is like, I'm gonna heal that pattern. I'm going to be the one that does it. I'm going to be the one that changes the trajectory of my family, of my lineage, of the karma that people have been carrying for generations. And I'm going to be the first one that actually does something about it. And that's a lot of heavy weight. There's lots of things that come to the surface, especially around that full moon, where you might have tried to do that in the past and you just did not feel supported at all. But right now, there is so much momentum in doing it despite that. In doing it despite that. Yes, and then on May 5th, we have Mars square Jupiter in Cancer in your seventh house, and partnerships become part of the tension here as well. So your home and relationships need maybe clashing right now from both sides. There might be a demand maybe from your partner of like, you're not spending enough time with me, like you're just over here overworking yourself, or being with your family all the time. Like where's time for me? or or just, I feel like a lot of emotional expectations may swell during that time. People may be having different priorities. You may be feeling like you need to balance and carry the weight again of your partnerships, of your family. And there can be overreactions or overextensions between what you need privately and what others are asking for you relationally. So do be very mindful and careful of that transit. Sometimes Jupiter can ask you to overextend yourself. At the same time, I feel like there's also always an opportunity and square tensions to overcome things. So it might actually also be a time where you do overcome something. Maybe there has been an ongoing conflict with your partner and your family, and you finally find a solution. How to work around that and how to incorporate both of these forces. Like maybe your partner and your family, all of a sudden they work together to find a middle ground. Um, or again, your exalted Jupiter in your seventh house has actually also been really, really good for you, dear Capricorns, about, letting people more into your life. You're actually, you're actually, in my opinion, a sign that is very sensitive and very loving and very caring and very giving. It might not be the same as Cancer, which is your opposing sign, which is much more like you can kind of see it a lot more with Cancer. They kind of wear their heart on their sleeve sometimes. With you, it's usually behind the ground. And like you don't necessarily show it like with words, but with actions. And even though sometimes things may feel a bit quiet with you, but at the end you're like, oh, actually I have been working on this and gaining money so we can go and spend a vacation. But sometimes your partner is like, where have you been? What has been going on? What is happening? And you're actually doing so much, but you don't necessarily say it. So it's a bit hard to read. But yeah, I think Jupiter in the seventh house coming in for you has opened up the spheres, and also receiving that care that you oftentimes give to people, to also let that into your life. The weight of the world isn't as heavy if you share it with someone else. But let me summarize the deeper story for you, dear Capricorns. This transit is rebuilding your foundation, but not in a purely peaceful way. It stirs the emotional ground, blurs some of the things before clarifying them, and then asks you to define what home stability and inner security actually means in very practical terms. So, this is what I have for you, dear Capricorns. I hope you're doing well. Let me know how you're doing down in the comments. I wish all the power to you throughout this transit, and we're going to talk to each other very soon. Bye for now. Aquarius suns and Aquarius risings, welcome to your Mars in Aries horoscope. Mars is going to be activating your third house, which is the house of your communication, of thinking, of writing, of siblings, of neighbors, of errands, local movement, media, and the everyday environment of the mind, but also your kind of like nearby, like your neighborhood, we can say, like the fourth house is the home and then the third house is the neighborhood. And really, this whole Aries stellium is activating your third house. So, that third house is an energy that is very, very poignant for you this time around. Initially, on April 19th is when the ingress happens from Mars into the sign of Aries. So, your mental energy accelerates, and there is more movement, more communication, more need to say something, explain something, decide something, or move through the immediate world more actively, which I will say is a bit foreign for you, dear Aquarius, especially if you are somebody that natally doesn't really have any Aries placements. So Mars can sharpen your thought and speech, but it can also bring impatience, argument, restlessness, or a tendency to react quickly with words. And this is a transit of mental and communicative ignition, which again, I think is a bit of an unfamiliar territory for you. Um, Unless you have natal Mars placements in your third house. But otherwise, it might be like, because for me, Aquarius energy is oftentimes a bit like detached and can like, it's you're ruled by Saturn. So it's Aquarius can tend to be very good of like working with archetypes, framework concepts, and like kind of like absorbing everything to that. But all of a sudden, you're like, no, I want to know things. I want to argue about things. I want to speak my opinion. Um, so yes, you might be all of a sudden perceived as somebody that is a lot more passionate than maybe you usually are. On April 13th is when we have that first transit of Mars, which is conjunct Neptune. And your perception here can initially get a bit slippery. You may feel inspired, poetically charged, mentally porous, or intuitively attuned, but also prone to misunderstandings around projections or confusion. So, not every thought is truth, okay? I know that you know that, but it can feel a bit wonky during that time. And not every message that you're receiving or giving may be fully clear, and not every interpretation, not every instinctive interpretation is always accurate. And this is an important checkpoint because are what are you actually perceiving, and what are you imagining into the situation? It's very much like third house is very much a time when this gets activated to see how our internal world reflects in the external world. And it might be a bit ouchy when we realize how much of our projection is actually just our projection. And that's how we create the reality around us through our thoughts and opinions. On April 16th, we have Mars sextile Pluto in Aquarius across your first house and third house. So this brings real personal power into the picture for you here because Pluto in your first is already transforming your identity at a very deep, profound level. And this sextile allows your speech, decisions, and movements to become vehicles for that transformation. So, words during that time will have a lot more force that you are using. So, your thinking begins to align more consciously with who you are becoming. And one of the teachings from, I think, the Tao Te Ching is. True happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do all align together. I think this is a very big moment for you, dear Aquarius, especially to really apply the teaching into your real life. One day later, on April 17th, we have a new moon in the sign of Aries. So a new chapter begins in, again, your third house, your communication, mindset, learning, writing, media, your local life, or how you process reality. And this can be a reset in how you speak and think. But again, only if you're willing to separate instinct from distortion. Yes, definitely a big one. We have on April 20th, so a few days later, we have Mars conjunct Saturn and Mercury. Big one for you because Saturn is your ruler here, so your ruler is getting activated. And Now, in this period, the mental load gets even a bit more heavier. So conversations become more serious, which, so, you're an interesting sign where sometimes you can be extremely detached and unserious, and sometimes you can be scared of your own seriousness that you carry. But yeah, check your documents, plans, logistics, commitments, deadlines, travel issues, or important communications that may require more focus and maturity during that time. It's because Saturn asks for rigor and Mercury sharpens the mind, but can also intensify pressure around that. So this can be a powerful time for disciplined thought if you avoid spiraling. Definitely keep your nervous system in check during that time. This is powerful. And on May 1st, we have a full moon in Scorpio in your 10th house. I don't have an image of the full moon here, but it's happening here in your 10th house. I'm talking about this because Mars is the ruler of Scorpio, so it's influencing that full moon on May 1st. So this is a time where your public life, your career, and visibility reflect the consequences of your thinking and speaking. And something may culminate around your role, your reputation, or direction, and it may be directly connected to what has been developing in that third house for you. So what you've said, learned, decided, or initiated. Like, are you the real deal? Publicly is what you are thinking, what you are saying, and what you are doing in coherence and alignment with each other. On May 5th, we have Mars square Jupiter in Cancer across your sixth house. So, your daily workload, your health, your labor, and practical obligations can overwhelm the mental system. So, too much to manage, too much input, too much responsibility. And there can be friction between what you think you can take on and what your daily reality can actually sustainably hold can actually sustainably hold. I do generally like Jupiter being in your sixth house, because it is Jupiter serves as a force of protection. So you might actually be more shielded when Jupiter is traveling in your sixth from injuries and things like that. And at the same time, what can happen is that because Jupiter also it can expand your unhealthy daily habits. And yes, that is the opposite thing of that, right? Like health and disease is kind of the same coin from different sides. And this is a time where it's, again, I think because your first, third, and sixth house are so active, what you're doing every day, what you're thinking, what you're doing as a workout, like how you're eating, all of that is influencing you. All of that is coming back to you. And so be very wise about what you are taking in. Your diet is not just your food, it's the movies you watch, it's the conversations you have, it's so many things that you take in. So be wise about what you are taking in. Okay, and let me summarize this deeper story arc for you, dear Aquariuses. This transit is sharpening your mind, of course, but it is also testing your perception. You're being asked to think and speak with more courage, more precision, and more self-awareness, not just more speed. Because if you're not embodying what you're thinking and what you're saying, you're not actually being, and you want to be the being. To be or not to be is the question for you, dear Aquariuses. Anyhow, this is what I have for you guys. Let me know how you're doing down in the comments. I wish you a lovely Mars and Aries transit. We're going to talk to each other very soon. Bye for now. Okay, Pisces suns and Pisces risings. Mars will be traveling through your second house. And Mars activating your second house means it's activating a realm of money, of income, of resources, possessions, your values, your self-worth, your stability, and what supports your life materially and also energetically. And it's really, your second house in general is in very much big focus here because all the Aries stuff is activating that second house of yours. And April 9th is the initiating moment. This is when Mars moves into the sign of Aries. So your attention moves towards your resources. You may feel more driven around your money, your earnings, your spending habits, or just, having a book where you're writing down all your financial expenses. You want to build security, defend what is yours, or asserting your values more clearly. The second house is not just finances, it is also what you rely on, what you prioritize, and what you believe is worth your effort. And Mars here can be productive, but it can also make you reactive around your security, because all of a sudden you have more, now you need to protect that. On April 13 is the first transit that we are getting. Mars is conjoining Neptune. This is where clarity around your values can become a bit blurred. It is a first, like it's a bit of a weird first transit that we are getting that can feel a bit hazy. So you may feel inspired to pursue something meaningful, but the practical details may not yet be fully clear. And there can be projection around money, around what will support you, around what is worth investing in, around what you think you need versus what is actually sustainable. And this can also bring confusion around self-worth, acting from a vague emotional hunger rather than a grounded sense of value. And I mean, you Pisces are just coming out of a period where your first house has been so highlighted by Neptune and then Saturn being there. So there's a lot of things that you're also relearning about yourself. Okay. On April 16th, things do get a bit more concise. We have Mars sextile Pluto in Aquarius in your 12th house. Your 12th and second house are active here. So deeper unseen processes influencing your values. Pluto in its 12th suggests that hidden fears, old patterns, private transformations, or unconscious material are tied into how you handle money and self-worth. And this sextile can help you access power by confronting what is operating underneath the surface rather than only focusing on the visible financial issues, because there might be some, subconscious beliefs and things that are actually really holding you back. And it might be like a nervous system issue around, how can I hold more? Like how can I hold more? Like so oftentimes it is in the nervous system, that we find the solutions. One day later, we have the new moon in the sign of Aries in your second house. So you are getting a brand new chapter around your money, resources, priorities, or self-worth. And this can bring a strong time to initiate something practical, but only if it is based on actual grounding rather than, the Neptune style idealization. Because what are you building and what is what is this built upon? We got to have a good base to build the house upon it. Otherwise, again, it's going to fall like a house of cards. That's not what we want. That's not what you want. April 20th, we have Mars conjunct Saturn and Mercury in Aries in your second house. And this is the time where material reality becomes a bit more sharper. And budgets, decisions, constraints, responsibilities, contracts, even with yourself, practical conversations and hard truths about resources may arise. So Saturn asks for your realism during that time, and Mercury brings the numbers, the information, the negotiation that is necessary, the planning that you need to be doing. Again, get a financial planner. Seriously, you dear Pisces, that is the advice that I have for you. Get a financial planner, do it yourself. You can also ask for somebody else, but you need to get your finances in check. If earlier in the transit, things have felt symbolically charged, now they become more concrete. And this may also be a moment where your values get tested. What are you really willing to commit energy to? On May 1st, we get a full moon in the sign of Scorpio in your ninth house. I'm sorry, I don't have an image of the full moon here. And why am I talking about this? Because Scorpio is ruled by Mars, and Mars in Aries, so it is absolutely relevant for this cycle, which means your beliefs, worldviews, meaning your teachings, study, or long range perspectives come into the picture here. And this full moon asks whether your values are aligned with what you actually believe in. And it may also reveal that a financial or self-worth issue is inseparable from a larger philosophical story that you are telling yourself. Okay, big, powerful full moon in your ninth house. I feel like your beliefs are getting completely reshaped this month about what you're capable of doing and achieving. And then on May 5th, we have Mars square Jupiter in Cancer in your fifth. This is important because this is your ruler. And now your desire can put, it's, I feel like it's a bit of a pressure test on like how stable all of this is. Pleasure, romance, creativity, children, fun, risk, and emotional expression may tempt you into access or overextension. And this can be a beautiful transit for passion, but it can also lead to spending or investing from the heart without enough grounding. Again, if don't overspend on your child if you have children. And what I'm thinking right now, there's this like whole like self-care, and it's just like actually overconsumption masked as self-care, where like you're getting stuff that you don't actually need. Like that is the day where I'm like, be a bit mindful of your spendings in the name of self-care here. Yes, and if you're going gambling in a casino, be also very, very mindful of not blowing out your money unreasonably. So let me sum up the deeper story for you, dear Pisces. This transit for you is about defining values through action and reality testing. You are not just figuring out what you want materially, you are figuring out what generally supports you, what is worth your energy, and how to separate emotional longing from sustainable self-worth. Yes, so this is what I have for you, dear Pisces. Let me know how you're doing. And yeah, this is what I have for you now. All the power to you to this Mars in Aries transit. I'm sure it's going to be a fun one. I mean, you're really one of the only signs that is on the edge of completing a whole new persona. I mean, we all are, but again, I think that shift from your first house into the second house and like Neptune not being in your first house after 14 years is really, really something very special. So, yeah, it here to I'm clanking, here to redefining your self-worth and values and making tons of money doing that. Anyhow, this is what I have for you, dear Pisces. So much love, and we're gonna talk to each other soon. Bye. Okay, so we've reached the end. This is my final slide. This is how you can stay connected with me over Instagram, YouTube, and over my website. I do also at this point want to recommend the Mars video because, the Mars video from the Meet the Planet series, because this is just, you can get to know Mars on a much deeper level. It's an in-depth podcast episode exploring Mars. I think a very presently important right now for everyone. And I do also want to highlight my house series where I have a podcast episode on each of the houses. So if, maybe your 12th house is getting activated right now, or wherever that Aries stellium is active in your chart, if you want to just hear me more deeply talk about one of the specific houses, that is also a very, very good starting point for you to get to know more about that house of yours that is being so deeply activated right now. So, if you've enjoyed this, I super appreciate likes, comments, whatever feels like it's coming straight from your heart. I only want things coming straight from your heart. Okay, please, nothing else. This channel is about arrows, and I want all of you watching this to embody arrows. So only comment if it feels like it's coming straight from your heart. Uh, Otherwise, don't. If it's coming straight from your heart, feel free to subscribe and send this video to somebody else that might also need this. Again, I do weekly overviews on this channel, deep dives into some of the transit. I talk about horoscopes. There's many things that are explored here. And yeah, again, I'm wishing all the power to you. This is truly a once in a lifetime, agglomeration of planets in Aries. And I think it's going to be really fun and amazing. Definitely harsh as well. But, again, are you creating or are you destroying? You're going to make the call on that. This is what I have for you guys. I'm sorry, I'm a bit stressed. I need to run to a next appointment after this, and this video has been way longer than I anticipated. Yeah, so much, much, much love. We're going to talk to each other very soon. Bye for now.